Welcome to the Mormon to Medium podcast, where we'll talk about spirituality, the paranormal, religion, and my journey going from Mormon to medium. I'm Nanette and Brad. Thanks for listening. Now let's go have some fun.
Don't be afraid. Close your eyes. There's a moon overhead, but the sun will rise. Blood on our lips, such a poisonous bite. The sound of our hearts go bump, bump, bump in the night.
Hello. This is the Mormon to Medium podcast. I'm Brad and I'm here with Nanette, and today we are going to talk about shelves.
Shelves, building them, breaking them.
And cleaning up the mess afterwards, right? Because that's an important part.
Rebuilding shelves.
Are we rebuilding shelves? I don't know that we need to necessarily rebuild shelves. And what do we mean by this, Nan?
So in your life, when you have questions and they can't be explained, you kind of put a placeholder on something and set it up on a shelf and just let it sit there until you can readdress it at a different point in your life. And a lot of times, for example, in the church, you can have questions and a lot of the answers are, well, you have to wait until you meet Heavenly Father to get that answer because we don't know it right now. So that's a shelf question or a shelf answer, right? So you put that issue on the shelf and pretty soon your shelf can get really, really piled high and there can be certain things that break the fucking shelf.
Yeah, if you get too much on there, then obviously it's not going to hold the weight and it comes tumbling down. And in the Exmo community, that's known as breaking your shelf, right? So what we're going to talk about a little bit today, because we've had several people ask, obviously we've changed the name of the podcast from the Mormon Medium to Mormon to Medium, because really this journey is more moving from one to the other, right?
It's moving forward, right? Learning and creating light in this space that you used to live in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and since so many people have asked, oh my gosh, what happened, Nan? You left? You're out? We thought that it would be something that would be beneficial to share some of the whys and hows and whats and all the feels.
And hoodles. Whys and hows and whats and hoodles.
I didn't say hoodles. I said all the feels.
I know. I'm sorry,
I'm like,
I'm in a Dr. Seuss book right now.
Yes, you are. Gosh, waiting for the Lorax to hop out and yell at me for chopping a tree.
Yeah, I have had a lot of requests from a lot of clients and also listeners asking, do you mind me asking, why did you leave? What was the thing that pushed you right straight out the door?
And something about that, a lot of people are a little bit nervous to ask and go, it's like, is that a taboo thing? But I think more people should talk about that. I think it's important to ask.
Well, I think that there is a lot of stigma around it, especially taught in the church. You don't ask about things like that. And there's a lot of judgment around people that have left.
Well, there was a talk in conference where they said it would be better for your child to hang a millstone around their neck and drown in the ocean than to leave the church.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely stigma associated with it within that Latter-day Saint community.
Right. There's a definite sense of, you're breaking up your family, you're not going to heaven, and now we're responsible for you. And a lot of divisiveness. When you're not able to talk about it, though, it's really hard to heal. You need to be able to speak your truth. Just like everyone else should speak their truth. And if they're super in the church, they should speak their truth and that should be just fine, but we should all be able to have a conversation about our belief systems and maybe one little speck of something will, help someone else.
Yeah, one way or another. It doesn't always have to be, from outside in. It can be inside out too. There's a lot of good philosophy, I think, on both sides.
I agree. And, not everyone's journey is going to be the same. I left for probably completely different reasons than anyone else would. And maybe some people were a lot alike too, and that's okay. There's a lot of people that are still my friends, very close to me. One of my very best friends is still very LDS. And we have conversations about the church and things that have gone awry in my belief systems and her belief systems. And it's wrapped up in love. It isn't wrapped up in judgment or fear or anything. And we should be able to have these conversations with people. And when people leave the church, there's this stupid stigma that it's easy to leave the church, and it's torturous. It's one of the hardest decisions to make because I was literally born in this church. I was raised a Mormon, I was raised LDS. I knew no different. And I thought, borrowing my parents' testimony, that was what you did. I didn't know better. And while I was being raised, there were little red flags that would come up. And I've talked about a few when I was younger before. For example, when I was getting the gift of the Holy Ghost, when you're 8 years old after you get baptized, I remember as a child of 8 thinking, this is so stupid because I already have this. Why do I have to have all these men put their hands on my head to make me have what I already have? That just seems stupid to me at 8. So I think I've always kind of bucked the system a little bit. I'm an Aries. What do you want? But that I kind of, even as a kid, just kind of pushed it to the side and was like, okay, whatever. I have the gift of the Holy Ghost. I've always had it, but whatever. I play the games. I checked the boxes, did all the things. I've always had this pure heart and always wanted to do the right thing. I ultimately just wanted Heavenly Father to be proud of me, and I wanted my parents to be proud of me. And when I got knocked up at 16, I came from a household that didn't talk about sex, okay? It was something like, oh, here's the Birds and the Bees book. Go ahead and look through that. And then if you have some questions, and, we kind of talked about periods even, but not like tracking them or any of the normal things. It was kind of taboo stuff. Like I remember my parents even like showering with their garments on. Like that's the kind of house I came from. Like very, very strict, very strict. So extreme and kind of scary now looking back on it, because it was just, but that's what they knew. Do you know what I mean? My grandparents were converts to the church, and my grandfather had up to a 3rd grade education. He was in and out of orphanages since the age of 2. And so he didn't even have a good education, and he became a hobo when he was 12 years old and hit the rails. So like,
wait. He was legitimately a hobo on the trains.
Yes, he was.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah, he traveled across the country from Ohio across to San Francisco, where he met my grandmother. It was during the war, and he had enrolled in the Army. And so they met. She was 16 at the time, and they met. They got married, and obviously had their honeymoon night. And then he took off on a ship and was gone. And the only way that he knew that she was pregnant is he had morning sickness.
Wait, he had morning sickness?
He had morning sickness.
Are you sure it wasn't seasickness?
No.
If he was on a ship.
But no, they were shipping him out to islands and stuff like that. He was in Guadalcanal area and all these places. But yeah, he knew.
So he was that connected.
My grandfather was extremely intuitive. Yeah. And so was my grandma. They were very connected always. And that's how he knew. But wow. These are my posterity. This is my family. And so these people that, are converts to the church, I mean, my grandma's dad, he got baptized. He was 88 years old. And I was 8 years old, and I was pissed that I just shared my baptism day with my great grandfather.
Yeah, so you shared your baptism day with your great grandfather.
I did. Yeah. He was baptized with me. And then he died in a car accident. Well, from a car accident less than a year later.
See, I think most people would be like, oh, that's cool. But I still have hobo questions.
This was a different grandpa, but yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever hear hobo stories?
I did. I heard lots of them.
Tell me hobo stories, because that's cool.
So one of the stories that he told me that still just baffles me, and I see it like on like Peaky Blinders and things like that. When the trains, you know how they have the big plumes of smoke?
Yeah.
Well, those plumes of smoke, would go over the tops of the cars, and the hobos are like in the cars hiding and stuff. But when they would go into tunnels, some of the tunnels are really long, and you could die if you didn't have your mouth and nose covered. And so the hobos taught my grandfather what they would do is pee in their handkerchief because they didn't have access to water all the time, right? They put it over their nose and mouth and hold it there so that the air was like filtered and so that they could actually breathe. I don't know what would be worse, the smoke or the pee. But
they're breathing urine instead of smoke.
But that's one of his stories that he would
Wow.
tell as he was traveling across the country. And I'm sure lots of things happened to him that you probably wouldn't want to talk about. He was such a gentle soul. And I mean, he wouldn't kill anything or hurt anyone, just such a gentle person. He loved carpentry work and things like that. So very good with his hands.
Do you know
very
who else
creative.
loved carpentry?
Jesus.
JC.
I know.
He's
right?
the man.
But these are my family, and these are the people that joined the church. And so our faith was very simple, and
What do you know their conversion stories? You said they were converts. How did they get into the church?
I have no idea. Nobody ever told me.
Huh.
My grandmother just told me, and I was very close to my grandmother. I used to hang out with her all the time. But my grandmother told me that the missionaries came in and talked to them and they got baptized. I don't know if it was before or after the war. I'm imagining that it was after the war.
Mm-hmm.
But they lived in California. And my grandfather was he just staunch in the church. And he was the biggest Mormon Tabernacle Choir fan. Like, seriously. Like, he would sing some songs, and his big dream was to always be able to sing in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah.
So I remember watching Motab with my grandma, and it was actually fun. I didn't love the music. I didn't love any of that. But it was fun because I had an aunt and an uncle who both sang in the choir. And
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I'd watch for, there's Uncle Kenny. There's Uncle Kenny. Oh, there's Aunt Linda. And watch for them in the choir on TV with grandma.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I think that's the only reason grandma watched it too.
So was your family were they converts, or had they been your generational?
It's generational. So my grandmother's mother came to the U.S. as a little girl from Denmark. They actually left in the middle of the night so that her father didn't catch them. And apparently, as they were going there in the afternoon, they ran into him and said, "Oh yeah, we're just going to the store or whatever." And he went back among his business and did his business, and then they never went home that night. They got on a ship and came to the U.S.
I bet her dad was just brokenhearted.
I'm sure he was. Yeah, I don't
Wow,
know.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and so that's how my great-great-grandma got to the U.S.
How interesting.
But it was because of missionaries in Denmark.
Really? So they
Yep.
were already Mormons when they moved, they came across.
Yep.
So interesting.
Yeah. And so it's generational as far as my family's concerned. Lots of generations of Mormons in the family. You just grew up that way. You're like, oh, okay. So, baby gets blessed, baby gets ate, baby gets baptized, confirmed. If it's a boy, you go on when you're 12 and you get the priesthood and
all the things,
all the check
boxes.
Yeah. Oh, and when you're of age, you go on a mission and you do all the things. It was very much a family culture.
Yeah, ours was the same way. I think, looking back, I think that my family was this way because my grandparents didn't come from that structure, that culture, that support of people, and that belief system, and they desperately needed it. And it came to them in a time that it resonated with them. That's why I always say, oh, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that happens a lot, right? When people are like, yeah, I don't really fit anywhere. And you get somebody going, hey, do you know what? Come and be a part of this organization, this group. We love you. We will welcome you in. You can have instant friends and neighbors because you're now a member.
Right. It's a whole community. And humans need communities. They need people.
And it's wonderful for that.
Exactly.
It's great for that. It's just the culty parts that are not so cool.
Right. Can we not delve into the culty parts? Because I might need counseling again.
Yeah. For those of you who listen to our You Might Be in a Cult episode, that
was a rough one on me.
That was really tough on Nan. She actually did have to go and see Justin afterwards and work out some kinks.
Dude, I had never thought of the church as being a cult until we saw the NXIVM stuff. And then I was like, what? So getting away from that though.
But some of that might come up because if we're talking about, breaking your shelf.
But that isn't what broke my shelf. That upset me. And it's recently, and it's some of my deconstruction. It's some of my, building back up and being like, okay, this is what was going on. And this is why I was so seeped in it. And I believed all of the negative stuff that they taught me about me.
Yeah.
At 16 years old, you're going to be chewed up bubblegum. Nobody's going to want you. You're damaged goods. No one will want, a young girl and a baby. And I'm like, now looking back, I'm like, that is just a crock of horseshit. Like it couldn't be further from the truth, but I had no support system telling me different.
It was very cold.
Oh, so cold. And I was made to go into my bishop's office and tell all the details, like all the nitty gritty details. I felt filthy even saying anything. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's gross. You're talking to this middle-aged man going, so Nan, tell me about your sexual experience.
Exactly. And it's all the experience, like all the details. And,
were you naked?
Right? Like everything.
Was he on top or were you on top? They ask very, they ask very inappropriate questions. And this is an old man talking to a teenage girl, and it's wrong.
It's wrong. And then they hand you the miracle of forgiveness and tell you part of your probation, so you don't get excommunicated. Part of your probation is to read this.
You better define those couple of things.
So probation, you basically, you can't partake of the sacrament. You can't talk in church, pray in church, or any of those things. And you're basically shunned or shamed for a whole year, at which time you can...
But you're still a member.
You're still a member, but at which time after the year, you can, be in full fellowship again. So, or you can be excommunicated or disfellowshipped. It could be any of those things.
And what's the difference between disfellowship and excommunicated?
So the disfellowshipment is basically probation, is what it is.
So it's a longer probation.
Yeah, it can be at least a year or longer.
Got it. And then excommunication.
Because you're out, you're done, they kick your ass out.
Excommunicado.
Yeah. So I was on probation and I had to read The Miracle of Forgiveness, and that's a horrible book. It makes you feel like a piece of crap.
That's Spencer W. Kimball, right?
It is. And at the time, he was my prophet too. So it was kind of a book that...
What do you mean he was your prophet? What does that mean?
As a teenager, he was the prophet. And so, he was the one that was always talking to the youth and was talking to everyone. And then he writes this book. And so, of course, I had to read the book. And yeah, me. I
got it. It was a big deal.
I skimmed the book.
You skimmed the book. You read the last few pages and were like, all right, I'm good.
I felt so ashamed and so dirty and so unwanted, and like there was no way to change that.
Yeah.
That there was no way back.
There's definitely some controversial issues that he talks about in that. And we could do a whole freaking episode on
just that book.
But some of the things he talks about is how pornography leads to homosexuality and bestiality.
Yep.
Not you're going to go and have sex with animals now because you
looked at porn.
Yeah, and how women have culpability when they're
raped.
Yep, when they're raped. So there are a lot of things in that just did not age well.
Exactly. And it's not a positive, loving place to come from at all. And then I also come from a home where I was abused. And I'm not going to go really deep into that. But the thing is neighbors and people around knew this abuse was happening and never said anything, never would do anything. And
was that just because it's just easier?
It's easier to look away, right? But when little kids want to go and stay at somebody else's house all the time and they feel safe and they don't ever want to go home, that there's a problem. I mean, I'm a mom and I've had little kids that are like that, and I'm not quiet. I've never been quiet, but I've also been on that other end of it and been the kid. So, had all these things going on, and it just didn't feel like love, And yeah, I never have understood some of the principles in the church, because a lot of the things seem, they say one thing and then they do another type of thing. And
Well,
I've never...
in all fairness, you have to look at that and go, okay, is that a cultural thing? Is that the people, or is that the doctrine? Is that the church?
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that people who are in will go, well, wait a minute. That's the people.
That's the culture of the church. It's not the gospel, and the gospel's still true, but it's like, no, okay, hang on. Like, the culture may have pushed me a little bit and made my shelf a little heavy. But believe me, the thing that busted my shelf, I will tell you.
Well, before you get to that, I would contend that without the people, there is no church.
Right?
You have to have the people to have the church.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a book that's floating around in some library.
It's true. And not necessarily a true book at that. So, I was always told by prophets, taught, that the church would never tell you what to do with your vote. They would never cross church and state. Well, have you ever walked in Utah? Church and state are mixed super, super great. Like, it's all over the place, all the way down to when I was a kid, there were not grocery stores even open on Sunday. Like, let alone people buy alcohol like I even cared back then. Do you know what I mean? But like, Utah's very controlling about what you get to do on Sunday.
Well, there are a lot of states that are like that, though. I mean, you go to the Bible Belt, it's very much the same way. And you have to look at it and go, okay, is the politics a reflection of the majority of the population? And at that time, I think it definitely was. The population became more diverse, and a lot of the political leaders are still very steeped, right?
I was always taught that the church would never tell me what to do with my vote, would never tell me what to do when it came to stuff like that.
I remember those discussions all the time.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because I got an email about Prop 8 for California, and that I was supposed to, vote against. I mean, this is another state.
Well,
even.
and what Prop 8 was the proposition in California to legalize gay marriage.
Exactly. And I'm like thinking, number one, why is the church sending me this in my email? Number two, why are they telling me how to vote in a state that I don't even belong in? And they're wanting us to rally around and spend money and, help support Prop 8 not going through.
Yeah, they were really pushing fundraising. They were
pushing it.
They had call centers set up that they were utilizing and reaching out to voters. They pushed hard on that.
Yeah. And in my mind, this is me. I have zero problem with someone being gay at all. I have a lot of friends that are gay. I have a family member that I love dearly and I would give my life for that is gay, and came out around, right when my shelf was breaking. And I'm sitting there watching the love that she did not get. And, just being told, well, you should fast and pray about this. That's a bunch of horse shit. Like, no one...
Talk about a dismissive attitude towards somebody.
Right? No one in their right mind is going to choose the hard path to travel. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't choose to be gay because of all of the stigma and the way people treat people that are gay. And it's not okay. It's not okay.
Well, but people don't choose it. It's they either are or they aren't.
Exactly. I'm not saying that the person that's gay really chooses, but the people that treat them shitty are the ones choosing.
Yeah, they act like, oh, it's a choice and you can choose not to be like
exactly.
this.
And you love who you love, the end.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a judgmental place. It should be a place full of acceptance and love and, okay, how can I help best? And, let's grow together on this type of thing. And that's how I saw my family member, and I have seen my family member struggle since that day. And the way that she had been treated made my blood boil in my veins. And I was not okay with that. I don't know why people would treat anyone bad that has come out and trusted their family with, you know what? I like chicks. You know,
Yeah, this is where I'm at.
this
with
is
my
where I'm
life.
at, and I need you to love me. And instead she gets something different. That's not okay to rip people down and, you know, already being shunned and not being enough and then being ripped down more. I'm not okay with that. And, then the things that I was going through, I mean, you would think that a murder, you would have, you know, a nucleus of love coming from your religion, right? That has not been my experience, and it should have been, but it wasn't. And I all the way down to some asshat that sees me on the news, tells his wife he's having an affair with me, and I get called into the fucking bishop's office. And it's gone down the whole chain of command from bishop to stake president to bishop to Nan, all of a sudden having an affair because, you know, that's what a widow needs.
Oh, widows are just horny. We
Right?
All know that.
We all know that, right?
Yeah. Do you know what? This story always blows me away. I can't believe they actually had the audacity to call you in and be
And
like,
chastise me
Yeah.
for something I hadn't even had a clue about. And I finally was like, can I even just see the person that's accusing me at least? They look him up on Facebook and then just start laughing. And I was like, fuck off. This is not a gospel of love. Goodbye.
so just
And
another
left.
item on your shelf.
Oh, my shelf was breaking right and left. And then I've always had questions when it came to the stuff that happens in the temple. Like I'm an Aries, guys. I'm a critical thinker, and I'm somebody that is like, wait, you just said this right here in this film, but then you turn around and you say this, and it's just the opposite, and I don't know which one to believe.
That's why when you tell a joke, like two horses walk into a bar, Nan's like, what the hell? Horses don't go into bars and they don't talk.
Exactly. I rip stuff apart. I'm like, I don't get it all the time. And it's not that I'm dumb. I just overthink it.
Horses don't do that.
Horses don't do that. It's such a stupid. Anyway, I was having issues understanding things that went on in the temple. So in my mind, I'm like thinking, you know what? Maybe it's just the people here in the temple that can't answer my questions. I'll go to another temple. I'll go through an endowment session. I'll go through a sealing session. I'll do all the things, and then I'll meet with the temple presidency and I'll ask them.
Now, this is after you had already talked to your leaders at your local church, right?
Exactly.
Your bishop, your
Exactly.
you know, Relief Society.
Well, and some of the
elders.
temple things you can't talk about outside of the temple, so you have to do it in the temple.
Yes, that's true.
So I had to wait.
Because they're secret?
Yep, because they are.
The reason I say that is because the big catchphrase is, it's not secret,
It's sacred.
it's sacred.
Yeah, but it's secret. But so in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, I have all these things that are on my shelf, of course. But in my mind, I'm thinking, if I go and I meet with a different temple presidency and I have a different experience, maybe they will have some answers. And I even give them the heads up. I have some questions, really need some answers. Like my whole testimony is hinging on what the fuck is going on in the temple, because I don't get it. I don't know why I'm wearing these funny underwear. I don't understand your handshakes. I don't understand why I have to disembowel myself in ceremony and all these things. I don't get it. Like, can you just like tell me how it goes together? Because I didn't get it.
Right. Now, this was after Corey was murdered, right? Did you
Yes.
have these same questions before that?
Yes.
And what happened with that? Why did it not come to a head sooner? Or what was the environment like for you prior to that?
I would always go with family members to the temple, or, you know, ward members, like bishops sometimes. And I would ask the questions there, and they would tell me, we're not really sure. You're just going to have to ask Heavenly Father when you get to the other side. And I'm like, hella no. No. If my whole entire eternity revolves a bit around the stuff I do in this temple today, and they even say that shit, I should understand what I'm getting into, right?
You probably should.
And it seems so odd to me that I got this new name. I liked my name just fine. I just got married, right? Like, why do I have to have a new name? And why can't I tell my husband? But he gets to know my name and I don't know his. And like, but I'm not supposed to talk to him about it. But somebody else told my husband. Like, I wanted all the whys. And believe me, God since then has heard me constantly. Hello, why, like all the time. I'm all the time wanting answers, but you know what? God answers my questions, but no one in the temple can answer me. And so I would go to a different temple and I would meet with a different presidency. So after Corey died, these were my failed attempts of trying to save my faith. I went to a temple, and at the time I was working in the Provo Temple in the youth center, and this is where you get to dress all the little kids up in white, and you get to take them up to be sealed to their parents. And I had a couple of really cool experiences with some little tiny kids that saw Jesus in the temple, and I mean, little kids can't lie. Like, they're just pointing to pure air, being like, there's Jesus over there. And I let him down and runs over and hugs this thing that's not there that I couldn't see, but he could see him, and he's sitting there talking to Jesus. And I'm looking at this little kid going like, holy crap, this is like really real. But I had really cool experiences, and I worked with a really neat lady that was there.
So hang on a minute. When you had something like that, did that just cement a testimony that, oh, this is God's true church. This is real. This is the only true church because this child just saw Jesus in the temple?
No, because I still had all my questions that weren't answered. I still believe in Jesus, and I've had lots of experiences with Christ, and this was just completely simple child faith with no veil, seeing Christ. And I was completely cool with that, but I didn't put it with equaling anything about the church. The temple is a quiet place, and all you have to do is be quiet to talk to spirit. And I knew that at this point in time. I knew that. But I met with the temple president in the Provo Town Center temple. And it was funny because I was going in with a friend, and another friend was coming out from doing a session, and we banged into each other. And so she turned around and went back in because I told her, I'm going in after this session. I'm going to talk to the temple residency.
Now, you had an appointment with them,
yes,
right?
Yes. And I have questions about such and such. And I was very forthcoming about what my questions were. And that I didn't understand. And they were like, actually, can we go with you? Because we have the same questions. And I was like, absolutely. So,
oh my God, 3 empowered women. That's not going to go over well.
And the funny thing is we're going through the endowment session, and we're like elbowing each other, being like, yeah, here's one of those parts that doesn't make any sense. And like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about right here. Like, and so they knew exactly what I was talking about when I went in to talk to the temple presidency. Now, mind you, this is probably my 4th temple presidency. And I go in there, and the secretary's like, oh, well, the temple president had to step away, and he won't be back for a couple of hours, but I'm here to help you. I'm the secretary, and I can help you. I'm like, well, let's hope you can answer my questions, because if you can't, I'm done. And he was like, okay, I'll try my hardest. Mm-hmm. And so I ask my questions, and my friends are both sitting there, and he looks at me and he goes, Nan, he goes, I can't answer those questions. I don't know the answers. He says, but I'm hoping you can help me with something. And I was like, yeah. And he said, you worked in the Provo Temple with my wife, and she just lost a baby, a stillborn, just lost a baby. And she's wondering if there's a God and if there's a life after this. And she's depressed and in a dark place. What can I tell her? And I was able to provide proof positive that there is life on the other side. And my experience was seeing and experiencing Corey with my human eyes, my awake eyes, and that it was positive that it was this. And he was just crying. And he says, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your questions today, but you helped me, and you may have just saved my wife. And I'm just like, okay, tap, tap, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out. And even after that, I kept trying to go to sacrament meeting. I drug you along, Brad. And I was trying so hard to just make it feel right. And it just didn't. And every single Sunday I would go and then I'd sit in sacrament meeting and it would feel like a sandpaper suit that I had on, like legit sandpaper suit. And I would just be pissed by the time I would leave. And I'd have to like process, that person just got up there and bore testimony to this, but I saw them do this week. And like, they're full of shit. Like, not to mention physically what my body was doing. And this is no exaggeration. This is literally what happened is everywhere my garments would touch me, I would break out in a rash, a red rash that was itchy and stingy at the same time. And I went through different kinds of fabrics. I changed fabric softeners and, detergent. And we were even having, one specially made for me that were tied with ribbons instead of elastic and like all the things.
Wow.
And no matter what I did, as soon as I donned those garments, I would break out in this rash. And anywhere the garments were not touching, I was not in a rash. And I was like...
And the garments are the underwear that Mormons will wear after they've been through the temple.
Yes.
They're told to wear them day and night.
Like literally, I was having a body, mind, and soul experience telling me to get out now. This was not resonating, not with your body, not with your mind, not with your soul. And so I was just like, I'm done. I'm just done. And when I stopped going, I felt like I could finally breathe. And then I had some angelic people. And the one person that referred me to the CES letter, she knows who she is and she listens. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You were an earth angel. So the CES letter is a book and it's kind of negative. So I'm putting that out there.
Yeah, Nan's
has
like,
a negative undertone.
Nan's like, read this, Brad. And I'm like, this is really angry.
But I think a lot of people that leave the church can tend to be angry because they feel betrayed, and lied to. And I felt all of those things.
Yeah.
I was processing a lot of emotions all at the same time. But, not being able to talk to anybody about it didn't help me heal. And here's the thing, like, this is my journey and this life is my life and it's my journey in this life. It doesn't mean that, so-and-so next door has to have the same journey. God, I hope not. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to have my journey. But, there's some richness to my story that hopefully, you can take a couple specks from here and there and it can help your life be better. But I would never tell someone, oh, you need to leave the church. It's so untrue and all these things and break someone else's shelf because that's not cool. That would be like me as a psychic medium walking around reading people. And that's rude. That's spiritual rape. You don't do that. That's not okay. That would be religious rape. And I just won't do it.
That's fair enough. I would never tell someone, hey, you should leave, but I'm not going to hold back the truth that I know either.
And I'm not either.
And I think think of it this way. They get really upset a lot of times, people who are in the church, if somebody shares their feelings about the church after they've left. And you'll hear that phrase, well, you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. You hear that a lot.
You do.
But my thought here is, if somebody who's actually still in can bear their testimony to me and they can tell me about the church, they should be equally as willing to listen to my thoughts and what I've learned as well, right? It should be able to be a discourse, a discussion. It shouldn't be something where they get so offended and personally attacked. It should just be a discussion like, hey, yeah, whatever, that's where you're at. Here's where I'm at. And you can bear your testimony to me all day long and tell me how hurtful it is and how sorry you are that I've fallen away from the church. But by God, listen to why I fell away from the church. And I'll tell you right now, it's not a falling away. You get up and you walk. Yeah, and some people run.
Exactly. But it's not without a lot of grief when you leave and a lot of emotions. You've got anger in there. You've got cognitive dissonance that I've talked about before, where, we went to my grandson's ordination when he turned 12 to become a deacon. And we drove all the way to Arizona and went in, and I guess we went in the bishop's office and ordained him. And then we sat through sacrament meeting and he served us. And we got out to the car, and that's when I came back into my brain and my body. And I was like, we drove all of this way. When are we going to do this? And Brad was like, Nan, we already did. Don't you remember? And I still to this day do not remember. Like, I literally have so much trauma and so much shit around my journey that to protect myself, I had to not be there.
That was definitely a mental toll of the contradictory information, right?
Well, and the thing is, I know that the Mormon church is who people are. They are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's their identity. And when you leave it, it's like you're telling them they're wrong and it's an attack on them. When in actuality, it never occurs to them to think, this is someone that I love and they left, and I want to know why they left and what I can learn from them. They don't want to know any of that. They don't want to open that door of, discussion whatsoever.
Well, they're taught not to, though. I mean, they are counseled very, very heavily not to discuss things with non-believers. They're told, don't take counsel from non-believers. They are not supposed to associate with apostates. So they're doing exactly what they're told. But again, that comes back to that cult-like mannerisms that the church...
That it does.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, after that, the CES letter had me delve down a deep, dark rabbit hole of finding facts. I had to find facts. And one of my favorite places, I've told a couple of my clients this, but one of my favorite places to find the facts has been on Mormon Stories podcast. But look for the ones that have LDS discussions attached to them. Because what they do is they go in order through all of Joseph Smith's, writings and everything, all the way through, how the Book of Mormon came about, and all the way through all the scriptures. And it's fascinating because they're drawing from facts of different things that they got from BYU archives and things. It's completely fascinating and jaw-dropping, and it's things that you can go look up yourself. So you're not taking their word for it. It's not just me sitting here telling you, oh, I fell away and you shouldn't be in it, and just listen to my story. No, it's actual facts that you can be like, okay, pause. I'm going to go look that shit up and see how it resonates with my heart and see if, I feel the same way. If it doesn't bother you, cool. If it does, you probably should look at it. And that's one of the places that I dug in. There's some fabulous scholars, biblical scholars that are on there that talk, and oh my gosh, it's so interesting to hear about, Christ's life and, how the Bible came about and stuff. I didn't know all these things. I had no idea. I wasn't taught them, through, my upbringing and stuff. And so the deeper I delved, the deeper I jumped with both feet into that rabbit hole, the more I wanted to know more and more and more. And then I finally was like, okay, when I came up for air, it was like, I think I've learned enough to know that I'm on the right path for me.
You spent weeks and weeks and weeks just studying this stuff. I remember very clearly how completely...
I had to find answers though, because it's like a torture, not knowing and being kind of at a crossroads in your life where, okay, am I going to go down this other path or am I going to go down here? And it was also compounded by the facts that all of my spiritual gifts had popped open and no one in the church had answers for me. They didn't have a pathway. They didn't have any clue what to say or do to help me. And I ended up going to a Peruvian shaman, for crying out loud, to get answers and to learn truth. And then I had spirit teach me. And then I had mentors that were the right kinds of mentors that came along just when I needed them in the right place.
And you had a very inappropriate relationship with some dude, and everyone judged you about that. And so they're like, oh, Nan's just leaving because she wants to sin.
Yeah, Brad's really good in bed.
Hey, oh God.
Me and Brad lived in sin for 3.5 years, just so you know. It's out there. Brad, you probably should read the Miracle of Forgiveness.
I honestly can't believe you just said that.
Well, you opened that door, so.
Well, but that didn't help things for you because you had a
No.
lot of people approaching you and telling you how wrong it was and how you were just being a horrible example to your kids and
It's
how
true.
you needed to repent and
But
you needed to change.
again, not the church of love, not, you know what I mean? It should have been a gospel of love. And I did get called into the bishop's office for sleeping with you. And I was told that they were going to do a bishop's court, text communicate me. And I told him, I said, that's fine. That's fine. If you want to hold this court, because I hadn't been to church in a while. I'm like, if you want to hold this court, that's fine. I'm like, but if you do, just guarantee that I'll never walk through those double doors again. Because number one, to hold a bishop's court, I have to give a shit and I don't. And number two, I have to be sorry and I'm not. I don't even feel like I need to be forgiven for what I'm doing. I'm like, and I would have married Brad a year ago, except for I'm going to lose every single death benefit that I get across the board. And I don't know that I can do that and feel safe. So I have to change laws in our state to make it so that it's affordable for me to be able to get remarried, the end, and keep my death benefits. And he was like, oh, okay, then we won't hold the church counselor
Court of love.
court of love, whatever. And so they didn't. But I'm like thinking, seriously, you're gonna threaten me for something that I'm not sorry for. And I've never been sorry for being in a relationship with you ever. It's always felt right.
Thank you.
And I think that once we had established that we couldn't be without each other and we were miserable when we were apart, I think that there was no separating us. It was just a matter of semantics to, decide when we're going to get married. But Brad did propose to me 3 times and I said no, because in my experience, people that I love die. So that's where I was coming from. And I wasn't going to get bullied into anything that, didn't feel right. So when I married Brad, it was right. And it was so funny because our bishop in that ward never once spoke to Brad. He went to church with me and like everything. Never once.
Well, not exactly true. So the first one did all the time. I got along well with him. And if I was out in the yard and he drove by, he would stop and bullshit with me.
But the other one.
The one that
had the field across the street from our house.
Yeah, the one that had the field across the street from our house never even looked at me. He would drive by in his tractor and I'd be out front and I'd wave. I'd give him the willy wave. He wouldn't even look over. So I made it a point every time I saw him. Didn't matter what I was doing, as I would stop and I would wave and try and get his attention. Not once did he ever look at me.
until we moved here, and he called him the day we moved here.
Oh yeah, day we moved. Oh, just need to get your new address so I can transfer your records. And I'm like,
the day we moved. It was like he was waiting for the second that we were out of Benjamin. Such a joke.
it was funny.
Yeah, whatever. You know what? Moving to St. George has been one of the very best things. And you know what? Our home is me and Brad. It's our home. And everyone that comes into our home can feel our energy. And it's a healing place. And it's a place full of love and acceptance. And I love it that way, even to the missionaries that come. They're never going to feel unwelcome or shunned or like they've done anything wrong, because they haven't.
And if that bishop wants to come here and say hello, I would welcome him into the house and say hello. And I would bullshit with him.
I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would.
Because I'm still a member.
Brad is. Dun, dun, dun. So tell us about that, Brad. Why are you still in?
So I can get the sympathy.
Are you?
Oh, he's in a mixed faith relationship.
Yeah, Brad's been called to say the prayer and sacrament meeting, and
Right, which is hilarious. I get this text message, we wonder if you would be willing to say the prayer and sacrament meeting. I'm like, have you ever seen me at church? I don't even know what church building you go to. Why are you asking me this? I go to church with Pastor Chris at Black Bear on Sundays.
they're a diner. We go to breakfast on Sundays with family and friends.
Oh my gosh.
That's our church.
Yeah, that was weird, but I just don't care enough to go through the process to remove my name.
And see, for me, it took a while, but because I'm an energy worker, my energy felt dirty because of the things that I found out and the things I know. And I'm not going to delve into them here. Maybe in the next episode, we can get into details so you guys can too go look and find out for yourself, fact check for yourself. But because of those things, they made my energy feel dirty. And so for me, I felt like it was the right thing for me to do is to completely pull my name away so that I had no association at all anymore. And I was done. Like body, mind, and soul, I was done. And so I did it. And I can't even tell you how free I felt. Like I was doing backflips. I was giggly about it. It felt so good to have nothing to do with them anymore.
Right. But getting to that, you went through a lot of stress. Like, what is my family going to do?
And how so much grief.
Yeah. How's everyone going to react? Am I going to tear them apart because I do this? And, you know, some of them have been so supportive and loving about it. And others, maybe not so much. They just don't understand. But they're not willing to talk about it to try and understand either.
No, I've had family that has said that they don't have time for me in their life anymore now that I'm out. I've had other family that I figured you left. I hope it's really going to make you happy. And I'm like, thank you. And it does. Thank you. You know, and if you ever want to talk about it, you let me know.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
You had others who were like, I'm so sorry that this is happening to you.
I feel so horrible for you. And I'm like, why? This is my choice, right? Like, and I feel great about it. But it's not that I'm making them do it or I want them to do it or I want to sway them. Like, but I'm important too. And, you know, just because I left the church doesn't mean the church is not a part of me anymore. It's part of my life.
Well, you were raised. You're raised in it. That's part of the reason we always refer to the Mormon church, right? As we're going through different examples of things, because that's our experience, right? So when we talked about cults, we used the Mormon church a lot because that was our background. That's what we understand and know.
And especially not to realize it was a cult. And then to see all of the signs, it was like shocking. And I got so much grief about that episode too, by the way.
Really? From who?
By a couple of elderly people
Oh.
on Facebook. They let me have it.
Wait, did they actually listen to the episodes then?
No, I don't think they did.
Was it just from
they just saw on the post that it was about cults and then we were talking about cults. And then they were like, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not a cult. It is the only true church. And the classic, bear your testimony thing. And I'm like, but you're not addressing what the word cult means. Tell me the bullet list, of what a cult is, and then tell me what your church doesn't do. And that's a discussion.
Yeah.
But just to tell me what that the church isn't, and this is your testimony, and that it's the only true church. I'm sorry, you're full of shit. And I called him on it, and I was just like, no. If you listen to the episode, you'll understand that what a cult means. I'm like, even pull out your dictionary, look it up. What are the bullet statements of being in a cult? What are they? And does your church do that? Because if it does, you probably should look twice. And they were absolutely not willing to even go there. And then somebody else jumped on and was bawling me out, and how dare I? And I'm like, all we're doing is talking about what a cult means. That's all. You're the ones that are saying that my church isn't. Like, okay, it's not. Show me where it's not. That's what I want to know, is just show me where it's not, because I studied that shit. I had to go get counseling. Okay. I didn't want it to be either, but I found otherwise, which is great. But you can't say something isn't something without even looking into what it is was my point.
Well, again, they're just doing what they're told. They can't look at resources outside of the approved resources.
But isn't that a lazy learner?
That is a lazy learner. It's also a characteristic of a cult.
Right. So yeah. And additionally, I'm just going to throw these two things out that really
here she goes. I can see her 11s. Something's really annoying her. When Nan gets passionate about something, or when she gets angry, she does this crunchy thing with her eyebrows, and she gets these two lines right over her nose that look like an 11.
I need Botox, apparently. Shit.
So I can tell whatever she's about to say really grinds her gears.
You're sleeping on the couch. So all growing up, I was always taught, and all the kids, all of us were taught, that the Book of Mormon was translated with the Urim and Thummim. And they even went so far as to tell us what it looked like and how it was worn.
This was a funky breastplate and a strange contraption that sat on your face like spectacles. And it was always a Urim and Thummim.
And I don't know when that narrative had to change. And you're getting gaslit about it. But now we're gaslit and told that, no, it was that rock in a hat. That's such a bunch of bunk. I would have never believed that as an 8-year-old kid. That's the most retarded thing I've ever heard. Like, really? And then to see the so-called prophet putting his face in a hat and looking at a rock.
Yeah, to demonstrate.
I'm like,
but that changed.
What?
That's a very drastic change because they always denied, oh, no. That wasn't translated by the use of a seer stone. Joseph Smith had a seer stone, but he used it to find treasure.
Exactly. And that's what they would say. And then the Urim and Thummim was given to them by the angel. And so, and that was, I could swallow that. Like that, that went along with stuff because I'm like thinking, I would think he was stupid looking in a hat at a rock to tell me where a treasure was. I'd be like, you're an idiot. Goodbye. Like, no. And now apparently the Urim and Thummim isn't a thing. And I'm like thinking, but when did that change? That's just so dumb. And it's like the Book of Abraham, the translation of the Book of Abraham from the papyri. Like that blew my mind. Like I was like, no. I have my cute little 8-year-old scriptures. It says it in it. It says it at the bottom. It is a literal translation of this papyri, and there's a picture of the freaking papyri there. No, that is a death papyri. Like,
yeah, a really common one.
Very common one. So it was all a lie. And so I'm like thinking, okay, so he really couldn't translate Jack. Like, seriously?
Well, it was an interpretation.
Yeah, well, now it is. But
Yes.
That's the thing. It's like they have to change everything to fit, the narrative now. So, yeah, I think...
You're being gaslit.
Yeah, and I don't like it. I'm going to light some matches and burn the place down. The end.
You probably shouldn't do that. You're going to get banned on Instagram again.
Like I just did.
You got to be careful what you say.
Freaking got banned on Instagram. Holy crap.
Yes,
I'm an Instagram Jill.
So if somebody makes a comment on Mormon Medium podcast
Nan
Instagram,
can't reply.
Yeah, that's you might.
I
not
love
get
y'all, but I can't reply because I got the ban.
Yeah, we don't know how long it'll last.
I'm in the jail.
It's only supposed to last like 24 to 48 hours, but it's been a week.
Well, and they were pissed because I put a thing up about Robin Williams. Really?
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's so stupid. I know I can be opinionated. I got it, but not for that. That's just dumb. Anyways, so Brad, are you going to ever take your name off, or you're just not going to ever give a shit? Because your whole goal this year was to give a shit.
Yeah, but not about that. It was more about people. That just doesn't, I don't know. I don't want to give it anymore. It doesn't need that. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, probably not.
I don't think it was a lot of work. I filled out a paper, got it notarized, mailed it, and I was done.
Yeah, I don't want
And they didn't even care enough to send me an email or a letter back. That's how important I was. 0. The attorney was like, your name is no longer on the records of the church. They're not going to send you anything.
Well, you weren't paying tithing anymore. Why would they send you something? There's no reason to.
They're
Once
like,
you stop
good
paying.
riddance.
Do you know what, Nan? Thank you for sharing more about what broke your shelf. I appreciate that. And I think all the listeners do as well. And if you are listening and you do appreciate that, please give us a good review. Those positive reviews really, really help get this podcast out there to other people so that we can continue making great content. And if there's something specific that you would like us to talk about, let us know. And you can put it on the social medias. And even though Nan can't respond, I can see some of those. As long as it's,
He'll respond.
I'll respond.
He'll just be from Brad's email.
Yeah, as long as it's not like a private messenger, because I can't see those. But if you make a comment, I'll respond.
And will you guys do me a huge favor? If you love our show, share it, like it, follow us, do all the things so you can help us grow. And we need to grow a lot. And I think this year's our big year. So if you would do that for us, I would super appreciate it. Sending you all the love for this week, and we will see you
on the other side of the veil.